y'all ready for yet another round of wacky headlines? I sure hope so. But if this is your first time tuning in and you have no idea what this is, let me give you a little context. With the modern day cryptid of Florida man as my inspiration, I've twisted some wacky real world headlines into ones that fit the Twisted Wonderland universe, with each headline receiving 3 possible suspects and some fabricated backstory. It'll be your job to figure out which of the 3 suspects did the deed, and after a bit of quiz-style thinking time, I'll reveal who I thought did it along with why. Guess the culprits, the original headlines, or just listen along for the silliness. The choice is yours, but whatever you do, I hope you have fun. Oh, and while these scenarios are inspired by canon events, they are all fabricated, so spoilers for EN content will be light if they exist at all. Now then, let's dive into our first headline. NRC student claims cafeteria ghost put dirt on their food. Investigation proves it was just seasoning. One afternoon, during the cafeteria's lunch rush, one student made the horrifying discovery of dirt on their food when they went to eat it. A mysterious brownish substance was sprinkled on top of their veggie burger, a substance they hadn't noticed until they removed the bun to add some lettuce. Assuming it to be dirt, the student quickly and quietly confronted the cafeteria ghosts about the blunder, only to be politely informed that the substance was not dirt but paprika, a seasoning. The student faced no repercussion from this incident except for their own embarrassment. Our suspects in this case are Vil, who picked up a new dish to try that he hadn't had before, Grim, who was always either praising or critiquing food, sometimes both at once, and Jade, who had insisted some of his foraged herbs be used by the cafeteria ghosts to craft his lunch. Who done it? If you said Vil, then you'd be correct. Vil quite embarrassingly mistook the seasoning on his meal as dirt. In his defense, he had been having an off day and usually takes his meals without any extra seasoning, so seeing the unexpected substance came as quite the surprise to the model. Luckily, Vil hadn't completely lost all of his reason, so he elegantly and discreetly brought this issue up with the cafeteria ghosts, making sure not to embarrass them for their blunder, only to then find himself embarrassed when he found out the blunder was in fact his. Unfortunately for Vil, a few of the ghosts couldn't contain their laughter at the absurdity of the situation, and rumors began to circulate, ultimately leading to the creation of this news article. Our next headline. NRC students band together to shoot down storm clouds ahead of parade. For NRC's founding day, Head Mage Crowley decided to add a parade to the celebratory activities and recruited a few students to help in the planning and execution of this event. However, due to plot reasons, the weather forecast suddenly changed from completely sunny to completely rainy, forcing Crowley to consider canceling the event. Members of the planning committee took issue with this turn of events and vowed to, and I quote, shoot down these storm clouds themselves, so the parade could continue on. Surprisingly, the rain clouds did indeed disappear, but no correlation could be found between the spells that were fired off at the sky and the clouds' dispersal. Our suspects in this case are Ortho and Idia, who allegedly successfully did something similar in the past, Deuce and Ace, who allegedly have the audacity to attempt such a stunt, and Kaleem and Jamil, who allegedly really love parades. Who done it? This one is a little bit of both, so if you said either Ortho and Idia or Kaleem and Jamil, you'd be correct. But if you said Kaleem and Jamil, you'd be a little more correct. You see, Crowley had recruited the Scarabia duo to head the parade preparations since Scarabia is known for putting on impressive parades, one of which Crowley had the pleasure of attending. With Kaleem's love for these events at the forefront and Jamil's skill in actually preparing them in the background, the whole affair was going smoothly. That was until the Rain Nation attacked, and those pesky clouds rolled in. Unperturbed, and under the false assumption that Ortho shot down the rain clouds for the star sending, Kaleem vowed that he would shoot down the clouds as well so that the parade could continue. Everyone at the planning committee meeting was too shocked by this suggestion to stop him, so Kaleem ended up gathering a few more students from Scarabia to join him on the sports field for battle. Meanwhile, Jamil desperately pleaded with Edia and Ortho to repeat their mechanical miracle, or else, and the brothers obliged with varying degrees of willingness. A barrier was set up so that the equipment couldn't be damaged by the cloud fighters, and the weather was cleared up in time for the parade to continue. Our next headline: NRC student gets bored waiting for friend in botanical garden, steals lawnmower, and drives to their dorm. Last week, one NRC student was waiting in the botanical garden for one of their friends who had promised to show them something interesting. However, the friend presumably decided to test their patience because after a half hour, our suspect grew impatient. Deciding their time was better spent elsewhere, our suspect went to leave the garden and along the way stumbled upon a riding lawnmower with keys in the ignition. Without a second thought, they hopped aboard, turned it on, and drove the lawnmower all the way back to the Hall of Mirrors, where they unceremoniously left it outside of their dorm mirror. This allowed staff to quickly recognize who and where the student was, and justice was served. Our suspects in this case are Rook, who had been seen in the garden picking alchemical ingredients around the time of the crime, Lloyd, who Jade claimed was in the garden around that time to help him with his mushroom, and Jade, who by pointing fingers at Floyd confirmed that he was also in the area around the time of the crime. Who done it? Well, Rook wasn't waiting on anyone, so it had to be one of the twins, and Jade typically practices restraint, so that only leaves Floyd. Now, Floyd did not know that the interesting thing Jade had planned to show him was a rare breed of mushroom Jade had successfully propagated. That was kept shrouded in mystery, but due to an argument earlier that day, Jade also decided to test his brother's patience. What kind of expression would Floyd have after finding out that all of his tortuous waiting was for a mushroom of all things? What Jade hadn't anticipated, however, was his brother stealing a lawnmower once he got too bored. To be fair, this equipment isn't generally stored in the garden since the garden doesn't really need mowing. However, the groundskeeper had been using it to haul mulch and was off in another bed tending to it when Floyd discovered the mower. Even if Floyd hadn't left it outside of Octavanel, the alarmed groundskeeper would have been able to place at least one of the twins, so it was only a matter of time before he was caught. That and the several dozen witnesses that saw him cruising around campus cackling in amusement. The spontaneous eel was saddled with 3 weeks of helping the groundskeeper with various tasks as punishment for his joyride. Our next headline: NRC student tries to steal test answers from teacher's lounge while wearing clear plastic bag as disguise. On the night before a big test, one NRC student thought it possible to heist the answers from the teacher's lounge in an attempt to avoid studying. In order to do so, they donned a guise and set out in the dead of night. However, their disguise, a clear plastic bag, was not thought out very well and resulted in their immediate identification and discipline. Our suspects in this case are Ace, who had heard about the test answers from Cater, Grim, who had been caught sleeping in this particular class all too often, and Cater, who was in danger of failing his class if he didn't do well on this test. Who done it? Surprisingly, Grim is getting caught doing something other than stealing and eating fish. Good job, buddy. Unfortunately, Grim was still caught doing something naughty and does have to face his punishment. In his defense, Grim tried to use regular paper bags, but his ears kept incinerating them, so he eventually settled on clear plastic instead. The plastic didn't catch fire, it just melted a little bit around the edges of the ear holes, so Grim was comfortable enough attempting his heist with it. These efforts, of course, were all in vain because no one else on campus is a dire beast with flaming ears and a pitchfork tail, so even if he had concealed his face, he would have been found out anyways. But even more unfortunately for Grim, Lucius was in the room and had just gotten up from a nap, and this kitty cat was having none of Grim's antics. As a result, Grim automatically failed the exam and now has to take many remedial classes. Our next headline: NRC student allegedly convinced campus ravens to spread anti headmage propaganda flyers. On an otherwise normal afternoon, the students and staff of NRC were startled by the sudden appearance of flyers falling from the sky. The pamphlets called for Crowley to be removed from his role as headmage and listed several reasons for this action, including taking bribes from students, faculty, and outside entities. It was quickly discovered that the campus ravens were the ones spreading this propaganda, but with a bit of interrogation, they revealed the true mastermind behind the affair. This student was made to apologize and receive disciplinary action. Our suspects in this case are Ruggy, who had recently been shorted some change from a task he did for the head mage; Azul, who had recently had a disagreement with the head mage about the lounge's profits; and Jamil, who recently was just having none of it from anybody. Who done it? Even though Ruggy and Azul's motives on the surface seemed plausible, Jamil had a much deeper seated grievance with the head mage and is our culprit here. You see, when Kaleem first enrolled in school, it was very, very likely that the head mage took a bribe from his family to allow him to be the house warden of Scarabia. Jamil took issue with this, of course, and even confronted the head mage about it. However, the head mage kind of blew him off and also kind of admitted that he took this bribe from Kaleem's family to Jamil, saying, "You know what this means, don't you? You understand. You're a smart boy." So Jamil, now in his current state of just being so tired of everyone everywhere, specifically Kaleem, decided that, you know what? If Kaleem can't be deposed as house warden, then maybe Crowley can be deposed as head mage. And so he took to the ravens, made up his little flyers, and asked them, begged them, pleaded with them, and perhaps bribed them to take these flyers and spread them across campus to plant the seeds of rebellion in the students and staff. Unfortunately, it didn't work quite as well as he had planned, but, it was an effort, so gotta give him that. But he was made to apologize to the head mage and to the campus, and then had to, do some community service on the side to make up for this slight. Our next headline: NRC student leaves job at Mastro Lounge, steals all their shrimp because they could always fish up more, the dorm's literally in the ocean. On a night where Grimm was not present at the Mastro Lounge, the establishment found itself mysteriously short on shrimps after one of their part-timers had left to go on break. Once they did not return from their break, an investigation was launched by the on-duty manager to track them down and question them about their potential involvement with the missing shrimps. The student was eventually found, apprehended, and questioned, where they revealed that they did take the shrimp, but figured it wouldn't be that much of a loss given that Octavanel is in the ocean and a few more could always be fished up if they needed. Our suspects in this case are Ruggy, who frequently works part-time gigs at the lounge; Apple, who needed some cash to upgrade his spell drive equipment; and Jack, who was working off a moral debt. Who done it? While Ruggy doesn't generally bite the hand that feeds him, this occasion was a bit different, as he owed Lucius some seafood and wasn't willing to spend his hard-earned coin to settle the debt. According to Ruggy, he only took a couple of shrimp, but it was later found to be a couple bags of shrimp, some for Lucius, some for resale, and one for eating. Part of his reasoning was that a break was coming up and people hardly ordered the shrimp dishes anyways, so if anything, Ruggy was doing Azul a favor by lightening his load. Plus, Octavanel is in the ocean, so they could always just have Jade or Floyd or someone go collect a few more if they were short. What does it matter if Ruggy also made an extra coin or two from that process? Quite a bit, actually, as this very much matters to Azul, who is getting very, very tired of folks stealing fish from his restaurant. But it's a bit of a conundrum from Azul, too, since Ruggy is usually such a good worker, and Azul doesn't want to lose that benefit either. The two of them were able to come to an agreement behind closed doors, and their relationship appears to have returned to normal. But our investigative team is quite unsure of and unwilling to discover how this makeup had occurred. Better to let sleeping hyenas and octopus lie. Our next headline: NRC student attempts to steal Hartsleable flamingo, gets chased by angry flock. It's that time of year again, when some silly students decide to start an inter-dorm prank war, one which inevitably covers the whole campus in chaos and has to be stopped by the faculty. The offense this time around was the attempted theft of a Hartsleable flamingo by another dorm student, which backfired spectacularly when the rest of the flock, who all reside in the same large aviary, decided to chase the thief out of their home and all around the dorm. Hartsleable students who rushed to the scene were of no help because they were doubled over in laughter, and eventually the would-be thief was collared, lectured, and returned to their dorm. A stern warning was also given by Rose Hearts to his students to refrain from any retaliatory folly. Our suspects in this case are Scarabia student B, Pomfiore student C, and Savannah Claus student A. Who done it? If you said Scarabia student B, then shame on you. They're too nice to have done something like this. It was instead Savannah Claus student A. They reportedly wanted to ruin the upcoming unbirthday party by stealing one of the birds, thus throwing off the color balance the rules require, effectively throwing Riddle into a tantrum. When asked about what they planned to do once they had the bird, the student claimed they were going to keep it as a trophy in their dorm and ransom it back to Hartsleable in exchange for the dorm admitting defeat in the prank war. Little did this student know how deeply Housewarden Rosehearts cares for all of the creatures residing in his dorm, nor did they think that the rest of the flamingos would kick up such a fuss. When asked for a comment, Housewarden Leona merely scoffed at the idiocy of the affair and denied any involvement, saying, quote, "Honestly, do you think I would be that stupid?" End quote. Savannah Claus student B has been reprimanded and made to weed the Hartsleable Gardens for a week as reparation for the stunt. Additionally, just in case they had any thoughts of skipping out, they will not get their collar removed until that repertory period is complete. Our next headline is: NRC student asks professor if he can leave detention to get more snacks. One day during a particularly boring detention session, one student had decided to discreetly bring in and subsequently eat some snacks. The monitoring professor noticed the crinkling of the wrapper and asked the student if they brought enough for everyone. The student, allegedly annoyed by this, claimed not to and asked if they could temporarily leave the detention to get more. The professor did not relent and instead confiscated their bag, which not only contained several more bags of snacks, but an assortment of games, puzzles, and other paraphernalia banned from detention. The student had to remain in detention without these items for an additional hour as punishment. Our suspects in this case are Cater, who was caught chatting up Rosaria for test answers around lunchtime, Floyd, who had been caught sleeping in class earlier that day, and Edia, who forgot he needed to actually be present in person for a lab that day. Who done it? Poor Edia was robbed of his snacks and his handhelds, all because he didn't want to share his gummy worms. If only he hadn't lied to the professor or had actually showed up to lab properly, then he wouldn't be in this mess. Yes, Edia did get detention, but only because this was the third time he failed to show up IRL for a particularly important lab. Annoyed by the recluse's reclusive behavior, Burrell gave him detention in order to drag him out of his hidey hole into much less favorable circumstances. That way, the labs would hopefully not seem nearly as bad, so Edia would actually attend them. Edia, being Edia, decided to sneak in a care package of games and other goodies that he could hopefully stealthily use to pass the time. It was all going well until his gummy worm bag gave him away. Lying to try to take advantage of the situation and escape detention only punished him further, but so it goes. Our next headline is: NRC student calls upon headmage to report a lack of brain cells. Last week, a student barged into the headmage's office claiming to have an emergency on their hands. The head mage, startled, immediately jumped into action and questioned where the event was taking place. The student then claimed the emergency was in a few other students' heads. Fearing the worst, Crowley began rattling off all sorts of ailments, trying to narrow down what had happened, only to have the student refute each and every possibility. Finally, when allowed to speak, the student claimed that these individuals lacked brain cells, stunning the head mage in confusion. The student then began to lament their woes about their dumb friends and was kicked out of the office as soon as the head mage regained his composure. Our suspects in this case are you, who is constantly surrounded by the brain cell boys, Riddle, who also had to deal with these brain cell boys quite recently, and Leona, who was upset with Savannah Claus student C over the flamingo incident. Who done it? Unsurprisingly, this was you, who is known to hang out around the brain cell boys, named that because they all share a singular brain cell. On this particular day, the shenanigans just became too much for the prefect, with the final straw being a fifth cauldron dropped from the sky. The battle-weary you made the long trek in silence to the head mage's office, where they sought to vent their frustrations to one of the people who should be managing these students a tad better. Unfortunately for you, they were almost immediately cut off by Crowley when he heard there was an emergency, fielding all his panicked questions. Eventually, you just snapped, reporting the lack of brain cells in their friend group and on campus at large. As soon as they began critiquing Crowley, the bird kicked them out of their office, and neither one has spoken of this event since. And finally, our last headline for today. NRC student tries to run to Queendom of Roses in inflatable bubble, rescued by concerned professors. Viral challenges are viral for a reason, and on this particular day, one of the NRC students decided to try their hand at one, only to fail spectacularly. The challenge, dubbed the Hamster Challenge, required individuals to make their way from point A to point B in an inflatable bubble without any breaks or stops. The points could be anywhere, so this promising youth figured they could go from Night Raven College to the Queendom of Roses by sailing in this bubble with a few rations. Unfortunately for them, sailing in a bubble is not only impractical, but extremely dangerous, and shortly after they left shore, they needed to be rescued by campus staff. They were subsequently reprimanded, and inflatable bubbles were banned from campus to prevent any repeat offenders. Our suspects are Ace, who was seen packing some rations, Hater, who had been watching similar videos on Magicam, and Deuce, who was, with the two of them, awfully concerned. Who done it? Well, Hater might have come up with the idea as a joke, but Ace took things a little too seriously and saw this as a chance to get himself some internet fame. He plotted a whole course to the Queendom of Roses, stocked up on supplies, got all his equipment into the inflatable bubble comfortably, and set sail, waving to a concerned Cater and Deuce who were standing on the shore, waiting for him to inevitably return within minutes. But what Ace did not anticipate were the tides carrying him out very quickly and very much off course, as they should. Nor did he expect that two eels were watching the whole affair amused. Eels, which very quickly turned Ace's viral stunt into a game of sea volleyball. Cater thankfully caught the whole affair on camera from the shore, so Ace still went viral, but for all the wrong reasons. Eventually, staff had to be called in to stop the game and rescue Ace before any true harm could befall him. For the stunt, Ace was detained on campus for a few weeks, being completely unable to go off into town for any reason, including for his club activities. And there you have it, our 10 Florida Man headlines, twisted to fit the Twist universe. Did y'all have a good time? Did you get them all right? All wrong? A little bit of both? Well, let me know down below, and while you're there, let me know if you like this kind of content and want to see more of it. If comments aren't your thing, you could always give a like or subscribe, and even if comments are your thing, you could also like and subscribe as well to show your support. Now then, before you go, I would just like to remind you that you're amazing, and I hope you have a wonderful day.